Well, good morning. For all those who are here and those that are on the web watching, I want to welcome you to St. Augustine. I want to welcome you to the Pauly Jail Training and Educational Mental Health Seminar. I know everyone has busy schedules, so I really do appreciate you being here. I think you're going to enjoy the presentations that you'll see today, whether you're an architect or construction manager or you're a county commissioner or sheriff, all right? You're going to see new products and technologies with a kind of a heavy emphasis on mental health, which I think is probably the biggest issue in any county jail or state prison right now. The other thing is when we take our first break, we're going to do about an hour to an hour and a half time underneath the tent. So all the manufacturers that are a part of our team have spent a lot of time and a lot of money. They brought their products down here. So you'll actually be able to see the steel cell. You'll be able to see the new locking door and the doors. So I want everybody to take the time and go out there and sit down and talk to the manufacturers while they're there, get some more information. And then when this is all over and done and everyone goes home, if you get back home and let's say you're a county sheriff and you want to present some information to your commissioners because maybe you're thinking about a new facility or new jail, you'll be able to get a hold of Melissa Miller from our company and we'll be able to send you a flash drive of the entire event. And that's also for the people on the web. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker. He's got 3 cards here, all right? Major General Mark Inch. Mark Inch served as Florida's 12th Secretary of Corrections from January 2019 until his retirement in December 2021, completing 40 years of public service. The Florida Department of Corrections is the 3rd largest state correctional agency in the nation. Major General Inch previously served as the 15th Provost Marshal General of the Army, Commanding General of the Criminal Investigation Command and Army Corrections Command, and Executive Manager of the Defense Forensics and Biometrics Agency. That's a long sentence. A military police officer for 35 years and U.S. Army Reserve soldier for 2 years. Following his military career and prior to joining the Florida Department of Corrections, Inch served as the 9th Director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 2017 and 18. He oversaw the operation of 122 Bureau of Prisons facilities, 39,000 staff members, and 186,000 incarcerated persons. So, without any more ado, I want to welcome Major Inch.
Let's see what we do.
Yes, he does.
Help.
Can you get it on the screen?
I see it here. I just don't see it up there. Are y'all seeing slides anywhere? There we go. Oh, excellent. Good morning, all. My name is Mark Inch, and it's a real privilege to be here. Joe, thank you for inviting me, and certainly thanks to Rob Carter for connecting us. This is kind of like the first time I've spoken in a training environment like this, and I was a little unsure of myself. I mean, I've done lots of speeches on leadership in the profession of arms and the corrections profession, or on soldier wellness and stuff like that. But, you know, trying to talk to a group of architects, construction managers, sheriffs, you know, the breadth of this audience, it's kind of hard. And especially on the topic of mental health. If we could pop up the slide again. It got harder when Melissa went on I'm assuming the internet, and found that picture. I distinctly remember that picture. It was the day before I retired. And I was feeling everything that one would feel at the end of a 35-year military career. But in terms of expectations, I realized that was 7 years ago and about 35 pounds. And I go, I'm not sure I look like that anymore. But the whole aspect of trying to connect, prison and detention facility design to address mental health, what would a major general know about that? It just really doesn't make sense. So I went on a little mental journey of, trust me, I don't think I'm a narcissist, but of what slide I would have preferred to just set you guys up for this one. So top left That picture was taken 4 months later when I became the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and I was trying to present that I was not a general. Because, let's face it, generals have trouble on the east side of the Potomac River. You know, Pentagon's on the west side. So, but that was that picture. That didn't come up. When I came down to Florida, my first one, I thought, you know, coming down south, being a former general officer, granted recovering, but, you know, maybe I should try to look like it. So that was my attempt of looking like a general in civilian clothes. Didn't really work very well, did it? So my chief of staff said, yeah, you need another picture. Probably one of the truest pictures is that third one over. That's just how I felt being the secretary of the Florida Department of Corrections. Great group of people, and absolutely enjoyed our 3 years together. And then the hardest thing in life is retiring and trying to find who you are after 40 years. So that was an attempt of matching Papa Inch with 8 grandkids and wise consultant. I was only offered jobs around Christmas time. And so I figured that's not going to work. Then I thought, well, let's just look at the pictures that are out on the internet, and I go, the action pictures. And I realized almost every action picture showed me kind of ticked off. And I don't know why. You know, the one on the left was talking to a reporter. Okay, that's talking to a reporter. Of course you know why. So that was my look of, I can't believe you asked me that question. The middle picture is in testimony before a subcommittee, and with I guess that's probably a similar look. I can't believe you asked me that question. And the very last one was what happens when somebody spent 6 years with an aide-de-camp getting them to the right place, right time, in the right uniform. When I found out I had to be at a memorial service, and I was wearing gray instead of black, and a Jerry Garcia tie. You notice that? That is not how you present yourself. And plus, I had asked, where do I sit? And nobody knew. And I'm going, so that was but that picture is actually in more newspapers, Miami Herald and Tampa Bay Times. Every time they criticized the department, that's the picture they used for me. Great. If you were going to come and try to pitch me something, and that's the picture you saw, okay, we need to pop it back up there. We don't like, they can all see me here. Let's keep the slides up. What would you think is that person? See, the real problem with, our facades, our public facades, is we hide a lot. And I really think, and this is why the picture that Melissa chose threw me off, is probably the truest picture that I think has ever been taken me, because I was so overwhelmed with the thought of retiring. I brought that picture home, and I showed it to one of my daughters, and her first statement was, "Dad, this makes my heart hurt." You see, she wasn't looking at what I think your eyes get drawn to, and that's all the stuff we wear on our uniforms. That, for those actually, how many veterans here? Certainly the sheriff is. Thank you all for your service. You all can read that uniform and know what it says. But my daughter looked right at my eyes. Look at that for a second. That's someone that bounced around the world for 35 years, did really hard jobs, I'd argue company command being the hardest. I served as a general officer for 6 years. There's a lot of people who want to be general. There's not as many who want to do general. It's tough stuff. Raised 4 kids. I lost my first spouse to cancer. At this time, I was blending a new family, was very blessed to meet a woman in the same season of life, and who I've been now happily married to for 11 years. I pretty much knew I was going to go to the Bureau of Prisons. I had been recruited by the Trump administration coming in, but there was still a process there, and the Attorney General had not said yes. So there's some unknowns there, and yeah, I watch the news too much. It's a problem. All that equals trauma. Now, in this short talk we're having here, I'm trying to represent actually the sheriffs, prison directors, prison ops, those that you work with, because I will bet every one of them, if you catch them at an honest moment, have eyes just like that. They've had experiences where there's been escapes, where either they or their staff has been assaulted, where the locks of their facility can get defeated and have been popped open. I got an answer for that if you want to know. Where there's been men and women under their care that have committed suicide. Wondering, is there something about the environment that added to the psychological pressure of that incarcerated man or woman? You're working with folks that have served in a tough career. I mean, with the sheriff that was just here, not to dime him out, but he was in the 82nd Airborne Division. He jumped out of perfectly good airplanes. That's got to play with your mind. At least you'll notice I don't have airborne wings. I didn't do that. But as you're interacting, one of the things I'm trying to hope I can give you this morning is how you prep yourself to deal with somebody that's had a career in corrections. See, because if there's an Arab proverb that says, you know, the eyes are the window to the soul. I mean, if you could look right through those eyes, well, you'd see a brain. That doesn't tell you much, huh? So what I did is I graphed out my brain for you. That's it on the right. Different people approach life differently. Somehow, my brain is this complex web that senses differences of light, of sound, involves emotion. I mean, I grew up listening to the Moody Blues and Pink Floyd. Yeah, if I could key in Dave Gilmour's guitar solo for Comfortably Numb right now, you'd get it. But the aspect of understanding how somebody receives information, you know, for you all, I mean, your brain looks different, especially for the engineers in this room. This is your brain. I know this. I mean, some of you are looking up there right now, and you actually understand that. I don't have a clue. I mean, that is actually reality. I mean, that's breaking it down into actual predictable math. I mean, I know people talk to me about, you know, tensile strength and this, that, and everything else. It means nothing to me. And we actually need someone to help us communicate. Because the engineer thinks, you know, known quantity, known equation, predictable results. My life's experiences, people aren't like that. And even if it's the most logical thing they should do, if they're affected by trauma, they're that much less predictable. And that's why we need architects. That's how I view architects on the left. I hope I didn't offend any of you, but let's face it, you didn't go to your senior prom in high school, did you? So as opposed to the correctional officer, we're pretty cool. But you have to translate the social environment that a correctional leader is trying to create into what can be built, real physics. And I would argue there has to be a dialogue, a facilitated dialogue that answers some of these questions. Now, these kind of questions, trust me, there's a story behind every one of them. And I could stay up here an hour and tell you stories behind it. But trust me when I say, having led 3 different corrections agencies, I want you to tell me the possible. I'm not positive I know what I want. And it's in this iterative, I mean, I know, frustrating for you, but in this iterative process that I learn and say, I can see that. Oh, here, tweak it this way, tweak it that way. But I want you, and I always would say this to my planners, both military and otherwise, plan without constraints. Okay, I would think for those of you in the business community, that's pretty exciting. You know, what does the Taj Mahal look like? Now, we know that's not where we're going to end, but there might be some aspect of it is, I'm willing to go back to the legislature for that much more money because that is innovative and I can see its potential. A lot of us are kind of visual. Seeing descriptions of construction compared to pictures of constructions, I'll take a picture every day. Hire a good architectural drawer. That helps. Believe me, it helps a lot. I've been lost in words so many times that I've become frustrated, and all it took was a picture. With this iteration, you do have to help the leader, the correctional leader, know when the no kidding, time to shoot the good idea fairy, that if we change one more thing, you're going to run over budget or risk the project being canceled outright. I wouldn't say that if it hadn't happened. And you got to help us do that. You know you talk differently to different people in the organization. Yes, engineers find the engineers, talk your language. As you move up, but when you get to the secretary, to the sheriff and all that, there's something that I kind of coined as institutional ADHD, and that is the higher up you go in the organization, the less you can focus on any one issue at any time. I learned this in the Pentagon. First tour, I was a lieutenant colonel, 2 floors underground. You may not even know there was, 2 floors underground there. Yep, that's where I lived. And as I would have to work projects up through my colonel, then the general, and moving up from there, I noticed the attention span got shorter and shorter and shorter. I mean, I could do a whole afternoon work session with a colonel. Obviously, when it's a general, I could get a good hour briefing in there to be persuasive. The 2 stars, lucky if they would pay attention for 30 minutes. 3 stars, 5 minutes. And when you got in front of the 4-star, if you couldn't make your case in 30 seconds to 2 minutes, it was over. Know the organization you're working with, where the approval levels are. Change your presentation to the level that you're working with. Shouldn't have to say this, but I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't have put it in here if it hasn't happened. Don't alienate key staff, like the chief of staff of any organization, or the administrator, or the sheriff's secretary. There are people you don't want to tick off because they are trusted agents of that agency. Trust me, you could be, come in 5th generation, but you don't walk in with the same credibility as the person that makes sure I don't miss all my meetings. It's a reality. Certainly understand the informal side of any organization you're going into. I would encourage you, for anybody you're bidding towards or wanting to partner with, if they have a strategic plan, read it. See the words that agency uses and how they present what they want to accomplish. Show them how you work within and in support of the strategic plan. Absolutely be aware of political and legislative pressure points. They're real. I mean, I wasn't voted into secretary. Sheriffs are voted in. That's got to be some pressure. Know what they are, but please don't use them. Trust me, we get manipulated enough. Don't need that happening. Just be aware of those pressure points. And then certainly as you interact, and this is typically with the legislative branch, but sometimes with people, might be in the governor's office, within the county commission, wherever you're working with, don't let the secretary get surprised by your initiatives, with other political members within the organization. It just, you have to repair a lot of aspects of trust. Now, I've got probably 20 more things I could say, but let's just go to the crux of it. And I think you heard that with the sheriff this morning. And that is, how do we start this conversation? If you notice on the marquee that advertised, Melissa put on there that I was with the Council of Criminal Justice, which I am very, very proud to be a part of that collection of folks, within the legal organization, trying to make nonpartisan recommendations to both federal and state executive and legislatures to improve criminal justice and criminal justice reform. And under that, for the past 3 years, I've been on the Veterans Justice Commission as we try to work for good policy as it addresses veterans that become justice involved. Well, I was in one of those meetings just last week, and a gentleman that had served time in a federal institution now did reentry. A statement he made that just jumped out at me, he goes, "I was on an island of despair surrounded by barbed wire. And I was the director of the agency where that island was." You're going to find as you interact with this current cohort of correctional leaders, and Rob Carter and I are very active both in the Correctional Leaders Association, that there is a narrative, a discussion, trying to envision our institutions differently than the tradition. I mean, the first prison I worked in was the United States Disciplinary Barracks. Remember, Alcatraz used to be USDB West. Built initially in 1875, The Castle. Remember, that was a great movie with Robert Redford. No, it wasn't. The Castle was built in 1910. That tier structure, really not conducive to a lot of our views of how to create an environment where men and women can become better and can reconcile with society. There is a desire to understand and to see innovation of construction that creates environment that is conducive to all of our incarcerated population, and certainly to those that we have to address the needs of their mental health. Where I put in there a space that engenders hope and facilitates meaning within the incarcerated population while addressing the agency's security needs. To me, that's where I would want my conversation to start. I'd probably recommend reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Typically not a book you'd think would be suggested by a retired major general. But if in construction we can build optimism, we know this, different lighting creates different sensory perceptions. Noise abatement, feeling of larger space versus constrained space. And there's so much more that you know that I don't know. Now, I do have what I think is the key answer to this, but unfortunately, my 15 minutes are up, and I'm now back on the clock as a paid consultant. My booth will be over here in the corner. No, I'm joking. Actually, I'm really looking forward to spending the day here with you. If there's anything I can do to help in this discussion, I really look forward to doing that. Thank you so much for this time.